Daniel Sullivan, and I'm the director of RF planning for Cambium Networks. And today we're going to talk about Skynet and their experience with cnHeat today. Forward now, I'd like to introduce Shahan Warsi, who's going to tell you a little bit about Skynet and himself.
Sure, absolutely. No, I appreciate you guys taking the time out and having me here this morning. My name is Shahan. I'm with Skynet. We are a WISP based out of Houston predominantly, but we service mainly the southeast and southwest area of Texas down to the Gulf Coast. We do residential, commercial, and enterprise services. And our network currently consists of roughly 3,000 subscribers across 40 towers in that geographic area.
All right, thanks. Let's go to the next slide. All right. So what we wanted to show you here, show everybody here, are two sites that Shahan and Skynet have as part of cnHeat. And Shahan, do you want to describe the two sites? And what they do for you?
Sure, most definitely. So the two sites that we initially started off with when cnHeat was launched was the newest site that we had in Santa Fe, Texas, and that site was a unique situation for us. It was our first experimental site where we were testing with our infrastructure, the EPMP 2000 access points with the newly released at that time, the Force 300 SMs with backwards compatibility and forwards compatibility. And our access points roughly were sitting at about, I'd say, 400 feet on the tower. And cnHeat at least did many things for us. The main thing was initially just seeing how great the heat map that it generated, just giving us a visual representation of RF in general. It was always, at least I could speak on the experience with in this company and for the individuals that work here. RF was always like, a big question mark, of a real guessing game in terms of where do you get signal or where do you not get signal. So it was really, neat, and it was very innovative for Cambium to put out something that would allow you to visually map out RF signatures in general and just be able to pinpoint where you would or wouldn't get service. So on that Santa Fe location, we were able to map out a general map of where we would market or where we would get signal. And it has been very successful off of that tower, and it continues to grow every day. East Bernard, the East Bernard location, the second one, that's one of our older towers. I decided to do a new and old just to get a sort of a comparison going. And the older location, East Bernard, has the original EPMP 1000s there with the Force 200 access points. I'm sorry, the radios. And that has, I believe, 8 access points on that tower. We've got a separation between 270 feet and 400 feet on that tower. One of our older areas with a lot more customers that we serve in that area. So the additional access points were needed. And the same situation in this scenario, we were able to accurately pinpoint with all of the trees, all the obstructions that were in that area. We were to pinpoint exact signal levels, locations, which just basically made the installation process that much more easier.
Well, thanks. Let's go on to the next one. I thought what we'll do now is we'll look at your East Bernard site, because what you did asked us to do for you, cnHeat, we charge on a per site basis, so you can put as many APs or rings as you want on a certain site at the same cost. And what you did was something unique, is you have the two different rings, but they're all offset at different azimuths. So why don't you share a little bit about this and how that's helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as I mentioned before, we've got 2 rings on the tower, one at 270 feet and another at 400 feet. And the reason the 400 feet came into play was just because our 270 had reached its saturation point in terms of number of subscribers, and that area just continued to grow. In order to keep up with the demand, it was cost saving to just allocate space on the tower and add some more equipment up top. And with cnHeat, we were able to sort of determine proper azimuths, proper location of where subscriber units would need to be, where these antennas would need to be on homes in order to properly hit the correct sector to achieve the maximum signal level, maximum modulation, and cnHeat with it being all in one price for a location, it just made sense to add as many units as you possibly could in order to get a nice little layout that you guys are seeing on your screen there. And we were able to, and we continue to effectively put in quality installations.
All right, thanks. On this slide right here, we have an example of two different heights at your Santa Fe location. One is the coverage map at 1 foot, and one is the coverage map at 30 feet. And maybe you could describe a little bit how it is that you use these different heights and how they benefit you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 1 foot on the left there, and this is considering that this tower is about 400 feet, or our equipment's about 400 feet on this tower. It was really unique and very interesting to look at, just about how much 1 foot would allow us to get, and that would just be a standard antenna mount somewhere off the property. Nothing too large, nothing that would stick out like a sore thumb. And you can see how we'd be very limited on the number of subscribers that we could potentially market our service to. I mean, I think everything up close to the tower would be more of a line of sight application, but you can see in this particular geographic area, the trees play obviously a large role in this situation. And being down by the Gulf Coast, we've got a whole lot of trees, and that's a constant battle that we try to overcome. And so that made us sort of change our gears, get a little creative. And so what you're seeing on the right at 30 feet, our company decided to start a program where we install towers, and 30-foot and 50-foot towers. And you can see how that exponentially at just about 30 feet, how that increased our service area, how we could basically go, I would say 4 miles away easily from the towers at 30 feet and still be able to achieve signal or see some kind of signal in order for us to better market our service to customers in those rural areas that don't have access to anything.
All right, thank you. On the next slide, I think what we're going to do the next 3 slides is we're going to show different levels of the heat map and how it helps you with a specific customer in being able to install. So why don't you, this is the first slice of it at 10 foot, and I'll just keep going along as you talk about each slice.
Yeah, absolutely. So with cnHeat, just to recap everything, with cnHeat, it allows us to streamline our installation process. And so when a customer makes a phone call into our office and our representatives take a sales call, the first thing we do is obviously get their address. And when we get their address and punch it into cnHeat, it generates a satellite image very similar to what's on your screen there. And that would basically tell us what expected signal or what where we could or could not get signal, and that's either 1 foot, 10 foot, so on and so forth. And so this particular site that you're seeing, it's highlighted. Dan's got it highlighted at 10 foot. That would be a location in East Bernard, and that's at 270 feet, and that would be 10 foot off the, just 10 foot, and you could see that normally you would only get signal somewhere in the middle of the trees. Naturally, installing in the trees wouldn't make any sense and probably not feasible, but it gives us a good, accurate representation on what to tell the customer in order to save money for the company. I would prepare the customer saying, hey, based on the trees or based on your distance from the tower plus the trees here, a standard installation where our guys are just installing a small mount on the roof would not be applicable in this case. And so we're basically having to change gears and then quote them for if they have a tower on site or if they can construct one of their own or if they require our services. We can then dive into the realm of you need something a little more creative in order for you to get service at your home. And so that this picture here represents just that a standard installation would not work. signals only found in the trees. So naturally, in order to get something on the property, on the roof, or in the yard, we would have to do something a little outside the ordinary.
All right, so here we go. We continue towards the next step on with 30 feet of potential.
Right. Yep. And so that 30-foot heat map that you guys are seeing, and you can see that it highlighted some more trees and some places on top of the roofs. And I think that's a metal shop. This particular customer had a little barn style shed in the back. And so you can see that 30 feet does give you more heat signatures. However, 30 feet on top of a roof is not usually what a lot of our subscribers want, a lightning rod sticking up on the roof. So it ends up telling us that 30 feet at 270 feet on the tower would not be an option in this particular situation.
So then we come to 50.
And yep, when you come to 50, you can just see the whole place gets plastered with signal. And so essentially, then it boils down to customer preference. We just tell them you need 50 feet in order to get signal at this property. And the 50-foot could be, obviously we can install the tower more or less in the customer's choosing. Where we've got a lot of real estate to play with, and so if they don't want it down by the front of their house or by the street where everyone can see it, we can tuck it away nicely behind maybe some of the trees or right behind their metal shed there where it's out of the way. It's when they're cutting the grass, that's not going to be in the way. They don't have any septic lines or anything that would cause any future damage to their home, or if nothing in the ground, no gas lines, no nothing that would be damaged in the process of the build out.
And this has been an actual install you've had in the past month or so. Is that right, Shahan?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Within the last month, this is a fresh install with a happy customer.
Okay.
And this slide here represents just that. As I mentioned, you can see the barn or the shop that's behind their home, and you could see us at one point. This was just a picture on the left of us testing. That's our test rig there, and we tested in various spots just to kind of figure out where we would get signal. And without cnHeat, if we did not have cnHeat, the initial process would require us to send a technician. That technician, it would cost us some money to send him out there to evaluate the location, and only for him to tell the person, sorry, you have too many trees, no signal. And at that point, we would then have to make another trip in order to survey. Naturally, the survey vehicle, as you guys can see, is probably a little more expensive to operate in operational costs. And so we could skip and save some money on the initial visit and jump right into the survey. Once they raised themselves up about 50 feet, our technicians on the left, they pretty much saw signal or they saw the tower no matter where they were. So then the customer opted to go behind their barn, behind their workshop. On the right, you can see us building their 50-foot roan tower there, and that's us installing a Force 200 SM right on top, and that pretty much tucks it away from everything that they don't want to see, and we just run our Ethernet cable from that location straight inside their house.
All right. We'll go through the benefits that you're experiencing, and we'll go through them one at a time so you can talk to them.
Sure. Okay, so this covers our Santa Fe tower. So within the last month, I would say we've had 12 sales queries that have came in off of the Santa Fe location, or roughly close to Santa Fe. 9 of those phone calls came in, and they resulted into no coverage. And so out of those 9, 3 of the homes we were able to effectively search on the cnHeat map, and we determined 30-foot towers would be a number that they would need to have in order for them to achieve their desired results, desired speeds. And so we effectively were able to install 3 of those with 30-foot towers at their homes. And this results of all of that is the overall savings. We've generally came up with the number of about $175 for a truck roll. And if we were to just do some little math here this morning, if we were to just say those 12 people, if we did not have cnHeat, that would be $175. We would multiply that by 12, or we'll multiply that by 9 if we're looking at the home specifically with no coverage. That would result in about $1,575 of operational costs that we saved overall by having cnHeat and knowing those homes would not get coverage. We were essentially pre-qualifying those sales calls before dispatching a truck or a technician out in that area, just letting them know that unfortunately they just wouldn't be able to get service off of our infrastructure that was already in place. And with that being said, for the homes that did get service, we didn't have to send 2 or 3 visits in order to determine that they could get signal. We could automatically jump straight into it and just say, hey, you need a 30-foot tower. We can dispatch a specialty vehicle that does specialty work, and you'll need a 30-foot installation. And so just that number of not having to do 2 to 3 visits to determine signal for those 3 homes that we did install would be about $500 in savings. And and then with that sort of as far as the customers, how they felt is my feedback, I guess personally, would be for the individuals that called in, I was able to tell them yes or no. They pretty much wondered how I was able to do that, and I explained to them that we now have a software that is so accurate to the point where that allows us to determine whether this is going to be an installation that will be successful or whether it won't be successful. And so it surprises them that such a technology exists, and quite frankly, it surprises us that we're at a day and age that we can do that now. And it's basically no surprise to them, no upfront cost to them, and it just gives them an answer immediately. So they can continue their search and finding another option, or they can go into our database. We usually collect all information from the customer, names and addresses and phone numbers. That way, in the future, if we do expand out in that area, we do keep that data for us to always revisit and see if they're in the market looking for service.
Well, great. So here's some additional on the next slide benefits you found.
Yep, and yeah, without cnHeat, it's safe to say, obviously, we wouldn't have been able to successfully complete those installations, and resulting into lost revenue. And those are installations that were, quite frankly, very difficult if you were to go visit and look at with the naked eye. But cnHeat's heat maps are very, very accurate. We were able to skip the testing all across the property, all across the roof. We knew exactly where to go, where to specifically test on the property, and as long as the customer didn't have any objections on the location of where we would build, we saved about an hour, at least an hour of surveying, and went straight to the location where we could find signal. And just another cost gained there, and was the overall effectiveness, the overall productivity. If you look at it in a way where if you know exactly where you will be getting signal, if you know exactly what you need and just the right quantity of everything, your installation crews maximize their workday. And here in Texas, weather being unpredictable, we get storms one minute and the other minute it's nice and sunny. It allows us to essentially work within our environment, work within our element, and if they can maximize what they need to do in a working day, and save time, well, the time that they do save, the 2 or 3 hours that they save during the day, we can keep them busy and give them other tasks to complete and other activities that they could work on. So essentially, they go with a mission. They narrow down what they need to do. They lay it out there, and then they obviously have much more time left on their hands. And we basically utilize and maximize that time to improve other customers that might be struggling in that area with signal level. And we tend to those people and are able to better service everybody.
Great. Here's some more on the performance you experienced.
Yep, installations for line of sights were in the optimal locations. Based on the heat signatures, we were able to determine where we would maximize RSI signals. AP performance, naturally, as everyone knows, that increased SM performance, increased SM signal and modulation. improves the overall sector, overall throughput for the access point. So if we're not putting in poor installations with poor signal levels, we can expect our access points to deliver that much more and that much more effectiveness around the clock. And so it's just good knowledge to have where you do get the best possible signal. You know, you could be on a location that gives you okay signal, better signal, and the best signal. Naturally, the objective for any WISP would be to install in the best location possible, resulting in better performance, not only for that individual, that customer that you're at, but on a macro perspective, you'd be improving your overall sector throughput, which in turn makes all of the other subscribers that might be connected to that access point, the access point won't have to be working just as hard to deliver that, just because you decided to do a good job everywhere else and install quality connections. The access point has a smooth way of basically operating and transmitting and receiving that information.
All right. And lastly, with regards to cost, when you purchased your subscription, you paid for it up front, which is at a 5% discount. But if you had paid for this overall, it would cost you $18.75 per month. And on this, for example, on the Santa Fe site. And so with regards to what you spend on this and what you get back, I'm assuming you're satisfied with how this has worked out then from a cost perspective.
Absolutely. It's safe to say with two subscribers, with two of the subscribers that we installed, I'm not counting their tower installation cost, but just a sort of a general installation that we charge up front just to lock in the customer's interest. That those two alone already paid for 1 year of my subscription for Santa Fe. So essentially from here on out, for the rest of the 11 months or 10 months, it's paid for. So everything that comes, the benefits that come from it, from cnHeat are all 100%, ours for the taking. Everything paid for itself.
So thank you very much, Shahan, for sharing your experience with Skynet and what you've had with cnHeat. Right now, I want to open up the time we have remaining. If anyone has a question, they can ask and type in or whatever. We have Shahan for a few more minutes, or if not, you can always contact me at daniel.sullivan@cambiumnetworks.com, and I can forward the question to Shahan or to myself if you have further questions about the experience and what Shahan has had, or just in cnHeat in general. So with that, Olivia.
Actually, there was one question from Jeff. He says, how does it compare to other tools in the marketplace?
So Shahan, do you want to answer that from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have experience of using both towercoverage.com and obviously cnHeat. And I would say by far cnHeat is leading that race by a far margin, large margin on that one. cnHeat's ability to pinpoint signal at I believe it's like a 1 meter accuracy pinpoint, I guess, if that's the appropriate way to word that. I mean, it's so accurate to where, you're within probably 2 to 3 feet of the signal there, and being able to overlay it with something like something that we're all used to, Google Earth probably, and being able to layer the heat signatures on top of another, and then being able to customize it in the future if you do change out your access points, or you do change out the type of SMs that are used on the customer sides. With cnHeat being able to adapt to so many cases in unique situations, I personally, my experience is that tower coverage does not accurately pinpoint signal level. I've had them off on multiple locations by a far margin, where I'm not able to actually find signal where they said I would find signal, and then end up being many feet over. So my personal experience is that cnHeat is by far more accurate.
Okay, thanks.
And then we have one other question from Tosin. Is there a trial for cnHeat?
Yeah, Tosin, this is Dan. Definitely. And Shahan, this is how I believe you started it. You started with us with the demo site. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dan was kind enough to allow a trial on our Santa Fe location. That was my first location that I experimented cnHeat with. So Dan gave us was generous enough to give us a few weeks on that. I think a couple of weeks if I'm not mistaken. And so I quickly was once I had it up populated. Once they did everything that they needed to do on their end and provided that, I had one of my field technicians go out to where the heat map was showing I would expect certain signal, let's call it a neg 55 or a neg 60 or a neg 65, and I gave them about 10 different locations, GPS coordinates to go visit, and some of these were on customer premises that I've spoken to beforehand, and I told them, hey, just don't be alarmed, someone will be on your driveway messing around testing signal, or I had them just pull over on the side of the street, and so that trial is what really tipped everything over for me, is because out of all 10 of those sites that I gave our technician to visit, it was a slam dunk. I think the only margin that it might have been off was maybe by 1 dB, and that wasn't at every site. It was maybe at two or three of them. But other than that, cnHeat nailed it right on the head, and that was enough for me to just say, hey, this is completely worth it.
Thanks, Sean. To follow up on the question about the trial, we'll definitely give you a demo site just so you can try it out just like Sean did, and that's free. And you have it for a couple of weeks, and usually we give you a little grace after that because people need time to try it out. And because what you're doing is we realize your money is valuable and your time is valuable, and to try a new tool, we want you to be able to see it and see the benefit of it. And so what you can do to try it out is you could contact me directly if you want, Daniel.Sullivan@cambiumnetworks.com, or what you can do is you can go to the cnHeat website under the Cambium Networks website, and from there, there's a way to download the necessary template to request the trial site. So yes, definitely, please ask us and we will do that for you. One caveat is we want to make this as affordable as possible, and so we use free GIS data. And when you make the request with the location, we'll look it up to make sure that we can provide that data to you. And if we can't, for some reason it doesn't exist, we'll let you know that the free data doesn't exist. And if it doesn't, there are ways to get private data, but it's far more expensive than cnHeat. But there's still value, but if we would help you to find a way to try to obtain it as cheap as possible. But anyway, for the majority of the cases, we can find free GIS data, but we'll look that up for you.
We also have a question from Raul. He's asking if the precision is the same outside of the United States, and they ask in South America specifically, and if terrain and vegetation databases are precise.
That's a great question, Raul. Unfortunately, so yes, there are places outside of the United States where the 1 meter GIS data is available. Unfortunately, no, in South America, we've actually looked at the whole continent and there is no free GIS data in South America. We can try to locate for you data or data providers that you can then contact to purchase GIS data, and they give you both the terrain and they give you the clutter on top of the terrain, which would be your buildings and your vegetation. So if you want to, you can contact me directly, Daniel.Sullivan@cambiumnetworks.com, and we can work with you to try to locate you data, but you would have to purchase it. I apologize for that. There is no free data in South America. Now, just in general, we do have data that's available like in the Far East, for example, the Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, and also in Europe, there's quite a few locations in Europe where there's free data also, and in Canada, of course, also.
That looks like it's it for questions.
Okay, well, I really want to just thank Sean for his time and his experience. Is there anything else you'd like to share, Sean, before we go?
No, I just want to, just for the folks that are listening, I mean, if anything, coming from a WISP perspective, I've been super satisfied with it, and it's just really impressive. I know with EPMP 3000 already out and available, we've purchased plenty of EPMP 3000, so I'd be be ready to hear from me again for another location. When once we get it all up and running, I will be definitely reaching back out for a third location with EPMP 3000 with the Force 300 SM. So if that's not enough to sort of inspire anyone else to pull the trigger on it, I mean, this is just it's not a fluke, it's not a gimmick. I mean, I'm ready to go for location number 3 and 4 the moment I've got them live. You guys will definitely be earning my business.
Thanks, Sean. I really appreciate it. And I want to do one more plug for Sean for anyone listening, anyone with desires internet or follows Skynet. Remember, Sean is with Skynet, and he coordinates all the operations there. You can find Skynet at www.skynetwisp.com, and you can see that they have a very large covering if you're in the Houston or surrounding areas to get state-of-the-art internet. So thank you so much, Sean. Really appreciate it. And oh, and by the way, I just want to reiterate, it's not just residential. If you need commercial enterprise internet, Sean and Skynet are the folks to go to. So thank you so much, Sean. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Have a nice day,
Take care.
evening, or
Bye.
night. Bye bye.